Chapter 2 of Tractate Sukkah discusses some additional laws of the Sukkah, the special hut that's dwelled and eaten within on the holiday of Sukkot. The Mishnah says, as you eat, drink, and sleep in the Sukkah, although many have a custom not to sleep in a Sukkah nowadays, although that's a side point, it's invalid to sleep underneath your bed. Others say you could. We bring an opinion where a sage, Rabban Gamliel, heavily implied that it's not allowed. The Gemara says the bed is 10 handbreadths high, thus creating a barrier between it and the Sukkah. There are also points in the laws of impurity. There's some verses cited as source, and it discusses the points on impurity further. There are additional qualifications on this. New Mishnah. If your sukkah is built on top of bedposts, it's valid. Some say if the sukkah can't stand on its own, it's not valid. The Gemara says the opinion that disallows the bedposts, it's either as it's not fixed in place, or as they're susceptible to impurity. There's a practical difference by schach on top of iron stakes on the ground, which are fixed in place but susceptible to impurity. Based on this, some say if the schach is just resting on a frame above the bed, it's valid, as it's fixed and not susceptible to impurity. New Mishnah. A sukkah that is midovloless, which is about to be defined. If the shade is greater than the sunlight, it's valid. If the sukkah is thickly covered, like a house, it's valid, even if you can't see the stars through it. The Gemara asks, what exactly is a midovloless sukkah? Some say it means a sukkah with very thin schach. Some say it means where each reed is a different height than the one next to it. Some say the Mishnah means that a thin schach sukkah is valid when its shade is greater than its sunlight. Some say it means it's that a staggered reed sukkah is valid as is a sukkah where its shade exceeds its sunlight. The point on the sukkah with the staggered reeds, the cases where there's less than 3 handbreadths of open space between reeds. If it's more, it's an invalid sukkah. Some say that even if it's higher than that amount, but the reeds are a handbreadth wide, it's still valid, as you can view it as if it's lower. This is based off a similar case by laws of impurity. There's a different case argued by laws of impurity, which seems to imply that this would be allowed even if the boards are less than a handbreadth wide, but this is disproven. We say if the sukkah's sunlight and shade are precisely equal, it's considered invalid if this equality level is at the level of the schach. They can be at the same level by the floor of the sukkah. We said a thickly covered sukkah is still valid if the stars can't be seen through it, but there's a debate if it's allowed if sunlight can't be seen through it. New Mishnah. If your sukkah is built on top of a wagon, meaning it's mobile, or on a ship, it's still valid, and you can go up on it on the holiday. If the sukkah is built on a tree or on a camel, it's a valid sukkah, but you're not allowed to climb up there on a holiday due to other prohibitions. If 2 of the sukkah's walls are in a tree and 1 is man-made, or 2 are man-made and 1 is in a tree, it's a valid sukkah, but you can't go in it on the holiday. If there are 3 man-made walls and 1 on a tree, meaning it could stand even without the tree, it's valid and you can go up there on the holiday. Basically, if the sukkah can stand by itself without the tree, it's valid, and you can go up there and use it on the holiday of Sukkot. The Gemara mentions, based on a related case by building a boat on a ship, that this reflects the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabban Gamliel disagrees. They'd both agree that such a sukkah is not allowed if it can't withstand a typical land wind. They argue if it's a valid sukkah if it's not strong enough to withstand a strong sea wind, based on whether you require a fixed or temporary dwelling. There's a similar point on the authorship of the opinion that it's a valid sukkah if built on a camel, which is Rabbi Meir, although others disagree as the verse says it must be usable for all days of the holiday, and such a sukkah can't be used on the actual holiday parts of the holiday. Rabbi Meir would allow it as the issue of using the animal is only rabbinic. However, he wouldn't allow using the animal as a sukkah wall, as it could die and collapse the sukkah, or it might run away. Based on this, he'd logically allow a bound elephant, as it's not running, and if it dies, its body is still tall enough to be a valid sukkah wall. This is discussed. Some say the opinion that says that the issue is of it running away. They hold that it dying is not a concern if it's bound, as that's very unlikely. Furthermore, the case must be where there's no empty space between its legs, as there's branches over there, and it must be that there's no concern that the animal will bend down and be too low, as here it's where it's suspended by cords. By such a situation, there would still be a worry of the animal dying, as it's just within the range to be connected to the schach. So if it dies, it'll shrink just below, and you won't notice, and the sukkah will be invalidated. We try to argue bits in other sources if we're concerned about this possibility of an animal dying. Whether or not such a thing is a concern is further debated from other sources. We end up actually disproving this, and we say that actually Rabbi Meir's issue with the animal wall is that he holds that a wall can't be something that stands due to it breathing, and others say it must be a man-made wall. There's a practical difference by a wall held up by an inflated wineskin. If you hold that breath is an issue, that's invalid. If you say it must be man-made, then it would be allowed. These points are further discussed. New Mishnah. If the walls of your sukkah are trees, it's valid. The Gemara says, but we say that a partition which can't withstand wind isn't a valid partition. So these trees must be really sturdy, and they won't sway. And the branches are woven together with other branches. And the point is that there's no concern of using the tree on the holiday, hence its permissibility. This is further discussed. The points on if something which sways in wind is an invalid partition is further debated. New Mishnah. If you're traveling on a mission to accomplish a mitzvah, a good deed of some sort, you're exempt from the obligation of sukkah. The sick and their attendants are exempt from sukkah. It's permitted to casually eat and drink outside of the sukkah on the holiday of Sukkot. The Gemara cites sources for these points, which are discussed. These are spoken on further in regards to when you aren't obligated to say the Shema prayer, a discussion from the earlier Tractate Brachos, and it says that mourners are obligated in all commandments besides for tefillin based on the verse, but they are obligated in the mitzvah of sukkah in spite of their distress. This is unlike somebody who feels distress from just being in a sukkah, as a mourner's distress is caused by himself. A bridegroom, the groomsmen, and all members of the wedding party are exempt from the obligation of the sukkah during all 7 days of the marriage celebration, as they must rejoice in the place of their marriage residence where the wedding feast was, which can't be in a sukkah, possibly due to concerns of seclusion with a married woman, possibly as they'll be distressed at having to do this in a sukkah. There's a practical difference if many people are coming in and out of the sukkah, where there's no worry of seclusion, but the bridegroom could still not like it. One sage, Reb Zera, mentions that he ate in the sukkah by his wedding, and he was happy that he could celebrate his wedding and also eat in a sukkah, which is 2 mitzvahs. There are related points. It says people who travel by day are also obligated in a sukkah by night and vice versa, and if you travel by night and by day, you're exempt by night and by day. And as mentioned, if you're traveling to do a mitzvah, you're exempt by night and day. There are further points. Men who guard a city are obligated only by the night and vice versa. And people who guard day and night are always exempt, and people who guard gardens and orchards are always exempt. They don't just make a sukkah in the field to live in, either as you need to dwell in a sukkah like you live the rest of the year, and that'd be way too uncomfortable, or it's as he's not doing a very good job guarding the orchard if he can sleep in a sukkah, and someone's going to end up stealing. There's a practical difference if he's guarding a pile of fruit, which can be viably watched from inside of a sukkah. There's definition as to what qualifies as sick to be exempt from the sukkah, along with some unique exemptions, like to sleep under a canopy in the sukkah due to mosquitoes, or outside the sukkah due to the sand in the sukkah smelling poorly and causing distress. If the issue is distress, only the distressed person is exempt, not also his attendants, like by a sick person. We said you can eat or drink lightly outside of a sukkah. This is the volume of 2 or 3 eggs. Others say the amount a student eats before going to class. You cannot nap lightly outside of a sukkah in case you fully sleep. This is discussed as to why, and some say that it's because even a light nap is considered to be sleep. There's debate in regards to napping while wearing tefillin and what exactly constitutes a nap. This is further discussed, although it's all spoken on earlier in Tractate Brachos. New Mishnah. The sage Reb Yochanan ben Zakkai once brought food only for tasting into a sukkah to eat it, and Rabban Gamliel brought 2 dates and a pail of water into a sukkah, and Reb Tzadok ate food with a volume of less than a cloth outside of a sukkah and didn't say an after blessing. The Gemara says that the stricter opinions there are stringencies that you can take upon yourself without appearing haughty. It also doesn't imply that an egg volume needs to be eaten in a sukkah, because the point of that statement is that you don't need to wash before, and say any after blessing after by eating a smaller than an egg-sized portion of food. New Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says you need to eat 14 meals in a sukkah total, 1 by day and 1 by night for each day of the holiday of Sukkot. The rabbis say there's no such set amount, besides for that you need to eat in the sukkah on the evening of the first day. Rabbi Eliezer says if you missed the first night meal of Sukkot, you can make it up by the last days of Sukkot, while the rabbis say it can't be made up. As the verse says, a twisted thing cannot be made straight, and that which is missing cannot be numbered. The Gemara cites the logics. Rabbi Eliezer says you eat as you do in your home, which is a meal by day and by night. The sages say it's as you do in your home, which is however you want, but the obligation by the first night is based on a verse. These points are further discussed. The verses and related points are qualified further. There are also stories about these sages, about their teachings, and about Rabbi Eliezer's teacher, the great sage, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who it says never engaged in frivolous talk, never walked 4 cubits without studying Torah or wearing tefillin. He was always first in the study hall. He never slept or even napped in the study hall. He never even thought about sacred things in unclean alleyways. He never left someone behind in the study hall. He always opened the door to greet his students and similar points. And Rabbi Eliezer conducted himself in all of these ways also. Further, it says that the great sage Hillel had 80 students. The greatest 30 were worthy of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. that it should dwell on them as it did Moshe. The bottom 30 were worthy that the sun should stand still, as it did for Yeshua, and there were 20 students in between. The greatest of all of them was the sage Yonasan ben Uziel, and the least of them was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he had mastered the study of Scripture, Mishnah, Gemara, the Halacha law, Agados, commentaries on the Torah, laws derived from seemingly extra letters in the Torah, rabbinic safeguards, other traditional forms of argument, gematria, the traditional formulas of number values of words within the Torah, the speech of angels, demons, and palm trees, parables of launderers and foxes, and a great matter, which is said to be the Ma'isa Merkava, the meaning of the heavenly chariot vision shown to the prophet Yechezkel, and a small matter, which is the inquiries of the sages Abai and Rava. The greatest of all these students, Yonasan ben Uziel, was so much greater that it said that when he studied Torah, any bird flying above would be instantly incinerated. New Mishnah. If your head and most of your body are in the sukkah, but your table is in your house, Beis Shammai says this is invalid, while Beis Hillel says that it's valid. They argue over a specific case where this occurred. Women, slaves, and minors are all exempt from the obligation of the sukkah, but a minor who does not need his mother is obligated. Once Shammai's daughter-in-law gave birth and was stuck in bed, so Shammai removed the roof over her bed and put schach above for the child. The Gemara cites verses to source these points. These are further qualified. A minor who does not need his mother is defined as either a child who can use the restroom by himself, or that when he wakes up he doesn't incessantly call for his mother. The point is that Shammai is stringent by this incident, and holds that even minors who still need their mothers are obligated with the sukkah. New Mishnah. All 7 days of Sukkot, your sukkah is your fixed residence, and your regular house is considered your temporary residence. If rain was falling into your sukkah, you can leave if it's intense enough that your porridge gets ruined from the rain. This is comparable to a parable of a slave who brings wine to his master and the pitcher is poured on his face. The Gemara describes making the sukkah a fixed residence. You bring your nice utensils there along with your nice linens, and you eat, drink, and relax in the sukkah. The verses are cited. It also says drinking cups can stay in the sukkah, but eating utensils should be brought back inside. Earthenware jugs and pails of water should be kept outside the sukkah. A lamp should be kept inside a large sukkah, but not in a small one. It clarifies that the porridge being ruined by the rain is made of split beans, which spoils very quickly in water. Related points are discussed. Also, if it started raining while you slept in the sukkah, so you go inside and then it stops raining, you can just continue sleeping inside. The analogy of the slave bringing wine was that actually the master dumped the wine on the servant, saying, "I don't want your service." There are other natural occurrences which are regarded as being not good omens from God. A solar eclipse, which is compared to being like a king who holds a feast and then takes away all the lights, says whenever the celestial bodies are stricken, which is presumably a bad omen for the Jewish people who get punished very often. Although some say that when the sun is stricken, it's a bad omen for those who worship idols, as they calculate their calendar based on the sun, while if the moon is stricken, it's a bad omen for the Jewish people whose calendar operates off of the moon. There are further similar points. It says that a nation is always smitten along with its angel, and also that these omens do not need to be worried about if the Jewish people are doing the right thing, what God wants, basically. These are further qualified. It says which sins cause these occurrences, and it says that 4 things destroy homeowners' property: withholding payment from the workers, stealing payment from the workers, casting responsibility onto others, and being arrogant due to their wealth. Arrogance is as bad as all those combined, and states a verse praising the humble. And that's the end of chapter 2.